The restaurant was far too elegant for what Rachel Morris could afford. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across white tablecloths, and the quiet murmur of wealthy diners mixed with the gentle clink of fine silverware. Rachel sat alone at a table near the window, her hands folded nervously in her lap, wearing a simple cream-colored dress she'd borrowed from her roommate. At 26, she worked 2 jobs, mornings at a daycare center, evenings cleaning offices. Neither paid well, but they covered rent on her tiny studio apartment and left just enough for groceries if she was careful. This blind date had been her friend Melissa's idea. "You need to get out more," Melissa had insisted. "My cousin knows this great guy. Just meet him for dinner." Rachel had tried to decline, explaining she couldn't afford fancy restaurants. But Melissa had been persuasive, and loneliness had made Rachel weak. So here she sat, with $5 in her purse and a knot of anxiety in her stomach, waiting for someone named James who was already 20 minutes late. She picked up her phone, checking again for messages. Nothing. At the table behind her, partially hidden by an ornamental column, sat a man in his mid-30s wearing a gray suit. His dark hair was neatly styled, and he sat with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to fine dining. This was Ethan Marshall, CEO of a commercial real estate firm, worth more money than most people earned in several lifetimes. He'd come to this restaurant seeking solitude after a difficult day of meetings. His 7-year-old daughter Sophia was with his parents for the evening, giving him a rare night alone. But instead of the peaceful dinner he'd hoped for, he found himself watching the young woman at the nearby table, noticing things he probably shouldn't. The way she checked her phone anxiously. The careful way she studied the menu, her face falling as she read the prices. The nervous gesture of smoothing her dress, borrowed, he guessed, from how she kept adjusting the fit. When the server approached her table, Ethan couldn't help but overhear. "Are you ready to order, miss?" the waiter asked with professional courtesy. Rachel's face flushed. "I'm waiting for someone. He should be here soon. Could I just have water for now?" Of course. 30 minutes passed. The man didn't come. Rachel checked her phone repeatedly, each glance more anxious than the last. Other diners came and went, but she remained alone, clearly embarrassed. Finally, a text message arrived. Ethan saw her face crumble as she read it. He couldn't see the words, but he could read their impact clearly enough. The date wasn't coming. Rachel sat for a moment, fighting tears, then signaled the waiter. When he arrived, she spoke quietly. "I'm sorry, but my plans changed. I should go, but I'd like to order something small to take away if that's possible." "Certainly. What would you like?" Rachel studied the menu one more time. The cheapest item was a side salad for $8. She opened her purse, counting the $5 she'd brought for emergencies. "Actually," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I don't think I can afford anything." "Thank you anyway." The waiter's expression didn't change, but something in his posture stiffened. "I see. Well, there is a $20 minimum per person in this dining room. Since you've occupied the table—" "I understand," Rachel said quickly, mortification clear in her voice. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I don't have—" She was gathering her things, clearly fighting tears when Ethan made a decision. He stood, walked to her table and said clearly, "Excuse me, but I believe you're my guest for dinner." Rachel looked up, startled. "I'm sorry, what?" Ethan smiled gently. "I'm at the table behind you. I had a reservation for 2, but my companion couldn't make it either. It seems wasteful for us both to eat alone. Would you join me?" Understanding flickered across Rachel's face. This stranger was offering her a way out of her embarrassment. But she shook her head. "That's kind, but I couldn't—" "Please," Ethan said. "You'd be doing me a favor. I hate eating alone, and the restaurant does have that minimum policy." He looked at the waiter. "Please bring the ladies' things to my table, and we'll order together." The waiter, recognizing Ethan as a regular and generous tipper, nodded immediately. "Of course, Mr. Marshall." Rachel found herself being gently guided to Ethan's table before she could form another protest. Once seated, she whispered, "You don't have to do this." "I know," Ethan said simply. "But your date stood you up. You've been sitting here alone for almost an hour, and you clearly came here in good faith. No one deserves to be embarrassed for that. I'm Ethan, by the way. Rachel. She paused, then added honestly, I only have $5. I can't pay you back for this. I'm not asking you to. Consider it an act of solidarity between people who got stood up tonight. He smiled. My story is less dramatic, just a business dinner that got canceled. But it amounts to the same thing. Dinner alone in a fancy restaurant. Rachel studied him, trying to understand his angle. Men who looked like this, dressed like this, didn't help struggling women without wanting something. Why are you really doing this? Ethan was quiet for a moment, then answered truthfully. Because 7 years ago, my wife died giving birth to our daughter. For months after, I was barely functional. People helped me in small ways. Neighbors bringing meals, strangers holding doors, a woman at the grocery store who paid for my cart when I realized I'd forgotten my wallet. Small kindnesses that I couldn't repay then. He met her eyes. You remind me that there are still people who show up, who try, who deserve better than being left alone and embarrassed. So let me buy you dinner. No strings. Just one person helping another. Rachel felt tears threatening again, but for different reasons now. Thank you, they ordered. Ethan encouraged her to get whatever she wanted, but Rachel chose modestly, soup and a small pasta dish. As they ate, they talked. Ethan learned that Rachel worked with children and loved it despite the low pay. She was saving for nursing school, hoping to eventually work in pediatrics. Rachel learned that Ethan had a daughter named Sophia, who was the center of his world, that he'd built his business from almost nothing, that success had come with costs he was still calculating. I give my daughter everything, Ethan said, except enough time. I'm always working, always traveling. My parents help, but I know it's not the same. I'm terrified I'm failing her. If you're worried about it, you're probably not failing, Rachel said gently. The parents who fail don't worry. They don't notice. You notice. Something in her words reached a place Ethan had been protecting. This young woman who barely had $5 saw him more clearly than business associates he'd known for years. As dinner ended, Ethan said, I have a proposition, and I want you to know I mean this with complete respect and no ulterior motives. Rachel tensed slightly. My daughter needs a regular caregiver, Ethan continued. Someone to pick her up from school, help with homework, make dinner on nights I work late. My parents are getting older and I need someone younger, more energetic. The job pays well, very well. It would cover your nursing school tuition and living expenses. Why me? Rachel asked. You just met me. Because in the last hour, you've shown more character than most people I know. You came to this restaurant even though you couldn't afford it because you didn't want to disappoint someone. You were honest about your situation instead of pretending. You didn't take advantage when I offered help. And you see people? You saw me, saw past the suit, and the success to the worried father underneath. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Can I think about it? Of course. Here's my card. No pressure, but the offer is genuine. They parted at the restaurant entrance. Rachel took the subway home, Ethan's business card in her purse, her mind whirling. 3 days later, she called. She met Sophia the following week, a bright, lonely little girl who lit up when Rachel suggested they bake cookies together. The job started 2 weeks after that. Over the following months, Rachel became part of their small family. She picked up Sophia from school, helped with homework at the kitchen table, made simple dinners that filled the house with warmth. Sophia blossomed, growing more confident, more joyful. Ethan found himself coming home earlier, wanting to be there for these quiet evenings. He watched Rachel with his daughter and saw something he'd thought lost, the feeling of home, of family, of belonging. One evening, 6 months after that first dinner, Rachel made spaghetti while Sophia did homework. Ethan came home to find them singing along to music, flour somehow everywhere, both of them laughing. We made a mess, Rachel said, slightly embarrassed. You made it feel like home, Ethan corrected quietly. Something shifted between them in that moment. The boundaries they'd carefully maintained began to blur, Ethan had been fighting his feelings for months, knowing Rachel was young, that she worked for him, that the power dynamic made anything romantic complicated. But watching her now, he couldn't deny the truth any longer. "Rachel," he said, after Sophia went to bed, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, waiting. "That night at the restaurant, I helped you because it was the right thing to do. But over these months, you've become so much more than my daughter's caregiver. You've become essential to both of us. And I've fallen in love with you.